it afterward. Question. And you just refreshed your recollection by looking at your notes? Answer. Yes, I did. Question. And the notes reflect that those items were picked up at 5 o'clock? Answer. Yes. Question. And since you are telling us that you received this blood vial at 5:20, you have concluded that this was after those two items were collected? Answer. Yes. Now, but do you have, as you sit here today, an independent recollection of the order in which you received the items, other than looking at your notes? Answer, no. Do you recall that line of questioning?
Yes, I do.
And did you have an independent recollection of the time that you obtained that vial, other than what was reflected in your notes?
No.
Or the order in which it was collected with respect to other items?
I didn't have an independent recollection. I still don't. No.
And is that because, as far as you were concerned, it wasn't that significant?
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'd like to read another quote from page 22-444, and it starts on line 23. Do you recall giving the following answers to the following questions, sir? Question, and after you received the envelope from Detective Van Adder in the foyer, did you then walk out the door to the crime scene truck? Answer, I don't know if I did that immediately or if I had other things there I had to do prior to that. Question, did you put this envelope in a brown paper bag? Answer, I don't recall if I did or not. Question, did you put it inside your black kit? No, I don't think I did that. Question, did you at some point walk out of the foyer to the crime scene truck holding the gray envelope? Answer, I don't believe so. Question, well, what did you do with it? How did you get it to the crime scene truck? Answer, it may have been in a paper bag, but I don't recall if I actually did put it in there, or it may have been put in a posse box. Question, is it possible that you just walked out the door with the envelope in your hand? Answer, it's possible, but I don't think that that's likely. Do you remember giving those questions to that answer, those answers to those questions?
Yes.
And at that point in time, did you have an independent recollection, meaning from your own memory of what happened on the 13th, as to exactly what receptacle, if any, you put the blood vial envelope in?
No, I did not.
So where did you come up with the various possibilities that you were speculating about?
Objection. This is speculation. There's
Sustained.
testimony after
Sustained.
lunch, after these questions.
Raise the question.
Mr. Fung, where did you come up with those various different possibilities?
Those were packaging items that are in the crime scene, available in the crime scene kit, and I named those types of packaging or packages off.
Okay. But did you have any memory at that time of putting it in a brown paper bag as opposed to the posse box, as opposed to just handling it without putting it in anything?
No.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to mark as people's next in order 2 photographs of what appear to depict the packaging of item 17.
183 and 184.
Or does the court want me to mark them 183A and 183B?
About 183 and 184.
Okay. just want to approach the witness first before I show it, put it on the Elmo, if I may.
You may.
So showing you what's been marked as People's 183 and 184 for identification. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
What does that depict?
This depicts the front and back of the envelope containing item number 17.
I don't know whether the resolution is going to be good enough, Mr. Fung, but he said that you documented somewhere that you received this from Mr. Van Adder, the date and the time.
Yes.
Can you point that out for us?
On the photograph to the right, which is the picture of the rear or the back portion of the envelope, there is writing, well, it's between the yellow seal and the red seal in the middle, and it says, received from Detective Van Adder, his serial number 14877 on 6/13/94 at 17:20, and it has my signature there.
And when you wrote that on there, do you know where you got the time from?
I looked at my watch.
Your Honor, I have another item from People's 160. Your Honor, this time I have an item that's comes from People's 163, and it's 163I for identification.
All right,
If I may approach the
163I. You want to show that to Mr. Scheck first?
Sir, showing you People's 163I for identification. Can you tell us what that is?
This is a LAPD sealed evidence sticker.
Okay, so is that the type of sticker that you used when you eventually sealed this before it was placed into the evidence control unit?
Sustained. It
Did
also
you-
assumes facts not in evidence at this point.
Did you use this type of sticker on this item?
Objection sustained and assumes facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
Yes.
Right. And can you just point it out for us on the Elmo where that sticker would be? Which one, the yellow or?
The red sticker in the, it's about 2/3 across the screen.
And was this item eventually brought into the evidence control unit?
Yes, it was.
On what date?
That was booked into ECU, which is the evidence control unit, on June 16th.
Okay. Could we circle using the telestrator, perhaps the time, the 7:22? 17:22. And the date, Mr. Fairtlow? And does that date go under the seals?
The seal appears to cover that writing, yes.
Okay.
The item that you're referring to, the date and time.
Yes, he did.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to play another videotape that we have of the events on the 13th at Rockingham. I don't know whether we've discussed that.
I don't believe we have. Let me see council sidebook. All right, thank you, counsel. Proceed.
Your Honor, I'd like to move on then to another video. It's Defense 1104. And first, there's a clip of Ms. Mazzola leaving the location.
All right, Mr. Fairtlow, do you have that available?
I believe it's 1102.
Three, please.
Can we replay that portion for a second? Back it up just a little bit. Stop. Can you just back it up a couple frames? Hey, stop. No, you almost got it. There. Mr. Fung, looking at that bag, does it appear to you that there is some rectangular item
Objection,
in
the
it?
evidence speaks for itself.
Leading question, counsel.
Mr.
Also,
Fung,
objection, competency with respect to this speaks for itself.
Mr. Fung, directing your attention to the bottom part of the bag that Andrea Mazzola is handling. What does that appear to be containing something?
An object does appear to be at the bottom of that bag, yes.
Could we have that item printed, Your Honor?
Yes, please. And let's, before we move on to from that frame, let's see what comes out. What's the print time on this, Mr. Fairtlow?
From the original frame reference where I queued it up as 006, so I would need to rewind it from the beginning and play forward in order to set that frame.
No, but I mean, how long is it going to take you to print this copy?
It's set now, I can move on.
No, I just want to make sure that we have that. I want to see the quality of the print.
So it'll take about 2 minutes, short.
All right, you need to move this.
From this location? The court's saying that we'll have to delay if we do that.
No, I mean, because of the jumping nature of this particular still, I just want to make sure that the quality of our print is precise, that's all.
Okay.
Since there's a lot of noise at the top of the picture.
Just 2 months.
show that to Mr. Goldberg, please? Does that capture what you need?
Excuse me, Your Honor? Yes,
Okay.
that seems to be pretty good.
All right, proceed.
I'd like to mark this as people's next in order. It would be
185.
185.
People's 185.
Sir, may I approach the witness again?
You may.
Sir, I'd like to show you what's previously been marked as 163H for identification. Can you tell us what that is again?
163H is a series of 3 envelopes, which are analyze evidence envelopes.
And is one of those the same type of envelope as was used to contain the vial of blood that you received in the envelope from Detective Van Adder?
Yes,
Which one is that?
that would be the gray envelope, which is right here.
And is the item that appears to be in the bag in the photograph that we just saw consistent with that in size?
Sustained. Sustained.
Your Honor, perhaps we could ask that that be passed around just so the jury can get a sense of what it looks like a little better.
All right. Also, you might want to measure it so there's a precise measurement on the record.
I have no objection to doing whatever they want to do with this, but I would request that we bring the real thing in.
That what?
Yeah, for this purpose, for the jury to appreciate the size of the envelope, let's proceed, but we will bring the original in at some point.
Okay.
All right. And we have Mr. Fung just give us the measurements for the record.
Lengthwise, from top to bottom, the measurement is approximately 10.5 inches. And width-wise, it's approximately 7.5 inches.
And Mr. Goldberg, may I see 185, please?
I didn't write a 185 on it, if I might do that on the reverse.
All right.
May I approach?
Please. Thank you.
Perhaps while we're waiting, I could also mark the print of People's 184 from the telestrator as 184A.
All right, you want to show that to Mr. Scheck?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Goldberg, would you approach? Thank you, sir.
Permission, could we pass
All right.
Could we-
795 just hadn't handed the last item to the bailiff.
Could we also pass people's 185 around?
Which is,
Well, there's the court's copy, and then there's a people's
It's the
copy.
same-
That's
it's the
our
same.
copy.
can I just look at it for 1 second?
Sure. Actually, why don't we pass around 185 and 163H at the same time?
So perhaps we could have the front of People's 184 put up one more time, just so I can get a print of that as well.
All right.
One, please.
Now, Mr. Goldberg, you had wanted to pass?
Yes, they still have 163.
All right. All right, if you hand that to juror number 1. Well, I'd prefer to have the jurors concentrate on what they're looking at. Goldberg?
Now, Mr. Fung, when you saw the scene that we just played a few moments ago, that's depicted in the photograph 185, when you saw that for the first time, did that jog your recollection about anything?
Leading and misleading.
Oh, well, on the misleading part, it is leading. Rephrase the question.
When did you first see that item of tape?
Bernard, I think that the problem here is
Vague.
is he talking about the
Question is
photograph or
vague.
the video?
I don't.
Sir,
right.
Mr. Fung, I'm talking about the
Rephrase the
videotape
Yesterday.
that you've seen, okay? That's a still photograph of which is depicted in People's 185. When you saw that, did it jog your recollection about anything?
Yes.
What was that?
It occurred to me that the envelope containing the vial of blood could very possibly have been in that bag.
And when did you first remember the bag at all, the plastic bag?
When I saw the video. No. Early that morning, I was going through it in my mind, and it occurred to me then. Well, I saw the video the day before, a small portion of the video.
Where was
And
that?
Here in court on the monitor.
He's kind of gesturing to the monitor by himself.
Yes.
Okay. And that was the first time that you remembered this plastic bag?
Yes.
Now,
Misleading.
Oh, well, answer will stand.
Now, did you, from a forensic science standpoint, sir, is it significant to you whether the bag was brought out in a posse box or a plastic bag or paper bag, or specifically how you carried it out?
Overruled.
No, it's not.
Is it significant to you from a forensic science standpoint that the vial is closed and that it is in fact in an evidence envelope?
Objection. Vague as to the word significance.
Overruled.
Yes.
And this was 10 months ago that these events occurred when you received the vial? about 10 months ago?
Just about, yes.
Is your recollection perfect as to all of the things that occurred surrounding the receipt of that vial?
No.
Okay. Your Honor, next I'd like to see the videotape that's been marked as Defense 1103 and the portion that shows Detective Van Adder arriving at the location.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yes, let's
What
approach
is he
with
showing?
the, hold on, with the court reporter. Mr. Goldberg.
Now, Mr. Fung, when you were in the crime scene processing truck, did you ever say to Andrea Mazzola, Miss Mazzola, I want you to know I have the defendant's vial so you can witness this?
Sustained.
When you were in the crime scene processing truck, did you ever say anything to Miss Mazzola to make a point to her to see that you had the vial, or that the vial was in your possession, your
Sustained.
custody?
Sustained.
Did you ever say anything, make a point to say anything about the vial?
No.
Did you have any reason to do so?
Overruled.
No.
Okay. Yeah, at this time I'd like to take another look at the document that's marked 1107. This is the back of one of the pages entitled Field Notes. It has 17, 18, and 19 in it. Maybe we can have a little bit of a close-up version of the 17 and 18, between 17 and 18. Sir, did you have an opportunity to take a closer look at this document and also Xerox copies of this document, particularly the item that appears to have been erased between 17 and 18?
Yes.
And is that in fact your handwriting
Yes.
and your date?
Yes.
Did you initial it in some fashion, or did you sign your name, or?
I put my initials towards the right portion of that circle, if you can see it.
And the date that you put on there was July the 5th?
Yes.
Was there anything of significance that was happening in this case immediately following that date?
One of the hearings was occurring very soon after that date. I forget which one it was.
Did you testify on July the 6th and 7th?
Yes.
And when you testify in court, sir, is it your practice to review documents in preparation for testimony?
Yes.
Now, in looking at this document, have you reconstructed the events that occurred on the 5th that caused the 7-5 writing and your initials to be placed on that document?
Somewhat, yes.
What's that?
I was going through the crime scene checklist and saw that the items were switched, or not switched, were still listed with the tennis shoes as being 17 and the blood as 18, and I wanted to put a note there for myself if I came across them that they were, I had switched the numbers. And after I had wrote it down, I erased it because I wasn't sure if I should alter the document as I was going to court.
So you weren't sure whether, at this point, you should make another entry on the document?
That's correct.
Now, is this something that you have a sharp recollection of, or is this something that you've basically reconstructed after the fact?
This is something I had reconstructed.
And is that based upon the date of 7/5 and in relationship to your preliminary hearing testimony?
Yes.
Now, sir, you didn't seem to do a very good job erasing this item, did you?
That's correct.
I mean, do you have erasers available to you at the Scientific Investigations Division?
Yes.
Is there a shortage of erasers?
No.
Is there any reason why you couldn't have done a better job erasing it if you'd wanted to?
No.
And, sir, if you were trying to alter a document with some sort of
Your Honor, leading, oral.
evil intent, do you think it would be a good idea to date
That is,
and put your initials on it?
sustain, leading.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Fung. If you wanted to alter a document with some sort of intent to mislead, would you leave your initials and the date on it?
Objection, Your Honor, is this a
Sustained.
hypothetical question of an expert?
Sustained.
or-
That's sustained objection.
When you did this, did you have any intent to mislead anyone
No.
or to hide anything from anyone?
No.
All right. Now, did you know Detective Lang or Detective Van Adder prior to this, prior to the events on the 13th?
I had spoken to them on the phone, taking requests from them over the years. and I had worked personally with them on 2 to 3 other cases.
Were you social friends at all?
No.
And what about Detective Furman? Did you know him at all?
I have never met the Detective Furman before June 13th.
What about Detective Phillips? Did you know him?
No.
Your Honor, at this time I was going to move to another topic. I don't know whether the court wanted to proceed. I see we do have some time. Okay. Mr. Fung, I wanted to ask you some questions about your grand jury testimony. But before doing that, I want to ask you first, as a forensic scientist, as a criminalist, when someone asks you the question, did you collect a particular item of evidence, what does that term entail, collect?
To me, collect entails the searching for the item, the identification of an item as evidence, the documentation of that evidence through notes, measuring it, and photo documentation, and describing what the item is. That's all done before the actual collection or picking up of the evidence.
Now, of those various steps that go before the actual physical picking up of numbering and photo documenting and so on, which of those steps is most important?
They're all equally important.
Are they equally important to the step of actually physically picking up?
They're important in the to maintain the integrity of the evidence.
Now, sir, when you were at the Rockingham location in the morning of the 13th, using the term collect in the way that you just did, were you involved in the collection process of all of the evidence that morning?
Yes.
And how so?
I identified the items that we were going to collect that day or that morning. I directed the photographer as to which photographs to shoot. I assisted in helping to measure each and every one of those stains. And for some of the items, I actually did some of the swatching.
What about with respect to the items at Bundy that were collected on the 13th? Did you participate in the collection process as you just described it on all of those items?
Yes.
And how was that?
I identified which items we were going to collect. I helped with the measurement of the items that we were going to collect. And I actually did some of the swatching and collected some of the stains myself.
All right. So had you filled out the crime scene checklist portion that lists the people who do the collection where it says by in the crime scene checklist? Do you know what I'm referring to?
In what time frame?
Well, if you had filled it out on the 13th,
Yes.
as to, let's say, stain number 6, just to pick one, what would have you filled it out as?
Any hypotheticals, maybe, I think that calls for speculation and it's vague. The witness should testify to what he did or he didn't do.
Oral.
We were working as a team that day, and if I was to fill it out, I would have filled out that we meaning Ms. Mazzola and myself, both did it.
Okay, but,
Overruled.
but later on, didn't you go through a copy of those checklists with Ms. Mazzola and kind of check off either both or Andrea Mazzola or yourself next to various items?
Yes.
All right. And when you were doing that, what was your intent in doing that?
It had been a issue in the, I believe it was the Griffin hearing. It was brought up by the defense.
Your Honor,
All right. Ask another question.
So it was after this hearing that we referred to as the Griffin hearing that you did this, when you were having the conversations with Ms. Mazzola trying to figure out who did what?
Yes.
And what were you trying to figure out specifically in terms of collection during those conversations?
Specifically, we were trying to remember who did the actual recovery phase or picking up of the evidence.
You mean the physical phase of actually physically picking up the evidence?
Yes.
And that's what you were trying to do?
Yes.
Did that become an issue, in your view, at this hearing that you testified to that we referred to as the Griffin hearing?
Your Honor, move to strike, and I'd ask for a curative instruction on the rules.
Overruled. But it is, as to that request, sustained as to the nature of the question.
As to what?
The nature of the question. Rephrase the question.
Okay, there was this hearing that you testified at prior to doing this process with Ms. Mazzola, is that correct?
Yes.
And at that hearing, in your view, did the issue of who physically did what come up?
Yes.
And was that the first time, in your view, that anyone spent a lot of time trying to figure out who physically did what at the crime scene?
Vague, sustained.
Prior to that, had any member of the prosecution interviewed you with respect to who physically did what at the crime scene?
No.
Had any member of the defense asked you any questions extensively about who did what at the crime scene?
To Your Honor.
Sustained.
And-
It's vague.
Okay. Well, in
Your
your
Honor,
view,
Your Honor, and it's misleading.
It's vague. I sustain the objection. I'm asking him to rephrase it.
I have a legal objection at some point. Why don't we just let it?
Phrase the question.
well, prior to that time, sir, had you testified in a in a preliminary, excuse me, in a grand jury hearing?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, we'll get to that later. And then, had you also testified in a preliminary hearing?
I don't recall the exact order.
Okay. Now, who was in charge of the crime scene in terms of the work that the criminalists were performing between you and Ms. Mazzola at the Rockingham location in the morning?
I was.
And who was making the decisions there in terms of the discretionary type decisions that are made by a criminalist?
I made the decisions.
Did you feel that you were responsible for all of the decisions that were made as to the collection process at that scene?
Yes.
And with respect to the Bundy scene, who was in charge of that scene?
In terms of the evidence collection, I was.
Did you feel that you were responsible for the collection process at that scene?
Yes.
And what about the return trip to Rockingham on the 13th? Who was in charge of that?
I was.
Did you feel responsible for the collection process there?
Yes.
If you were to divide the workup of a criminalist into the mental component of deciding what to collect, what not to collect, and the discretionary type decisions, and then a physical component of actually collecting, which component were you involved in, do you believe, primarily?
Objection.
Overruled.
Primarily, I was involved with the mental aspect of the crime scene investigation.
And what about Andrea Mazzola?
She was the physical portion.
Okay. And when you testified at the grand jury as to who was collecting what, Was this your state of mind with respect to the division of authority there?
Sustained. Raise the question.
What was your state of mind with respect to who was responsible for all the collection when you testified at the grand jury?
At the grand jury hearing, I was in charge of the evidence collection, and I was the supervisor, and I made the decisions.
And under the state of mind, when you testified at the grand jury, who collected the evidence in the sense that you have defined it here today?
Objection.
Overruled.
Calling for,
Overruled.
It was me.
Okay, Your Honor, I'd like to continue with this perhaps later, but maybe this would be a good time to break.
All right. After. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the morning session. Please remember all my admonitions to you. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Do not allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case. Do not conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. As far as the jury is concerned, we'll stand in recess until 9 a.m. Monday. Thank you. All right.